Racial tensions boiling over in the streets of Brooklyn Center, Minnesota overnight. The protests come after Daunte Wright, a 20-year-old black man, died after being shot by a police officer during a traffic stop. A stunning development today with the local police chief saying the female officer accidentally fired a gun instead of a taser at Wright. We're about to show you some of the body-worn camera footage of the incident. But first, a warning that some viewers may find it disturbing.
Sometimes you can't unwatch a video.
Those words coming from Brooklyn Center's top cop after he released footage of officers surrounding Wright's car on Sunday afternoon. When Wright attempts to jump back into the vehicle, a female officer pulls out her gun and fires a single bullet, despite verbal indications that she was planning to use a taser.
As you can hear, the officer, while struggling with Mr. Wright, shouts, "Taser, taser," several times. It is my belief that the officer had the intention to deploy their taser, but instead shot Mr. Wright with a single bullet. This appears to me, from what I've viewed and the officer's reaction and distress immediately after, that this was an accidental discharge that resulted in the tragic death of Mr. Wright.
Authorities say Wright was pulled over for having an expired registration. Officers attempted to arrest him when they learned he was wanted on an outstanding warrant. The 20-year-old called his mom on the phone just moments after he was pulled over.
Then I heard the police officer come to the window and say, "Put the phone down and get out of the car." And Daunte said, "Why?" And he said, "We'll explain to you when you get out of the car." Like a minute later, I called and his girlfriend answered, which was the passenger in the car, and said that he'd been shot.
Wright sped away from the scene after he was shot, but crashed several blocks away. The officer who opened fire has been placed on administrative leave.
She will not be returning to duty until this investigation has run its course. And she, for all intents and purposes, I think we can look at the video and ascertain whether or not she'll be returning.
Wright's death comes amid heightened tensions in the Minneapolis-area, where former police officer Derek Chauvin is on trial, charged with the murder of another black man, George Floyd.
Our hearts are aching right now. We are in pain right now. And we recognize that this couldn't have happened at a worse time.
Your mask, that'd be great.
The shooting of Daunte Wright having an impact on the nearby trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin for the death of George Floyd. Today, the defense asked for the jury to be sequestered so they wouldn't be affected by coverage of Wright's killing and protests. The judge said no. The trial continued with the testimony of Floyd's younger brother, Philonis, who told the court about growing up in public housing with his family in Texas.
Brother was number 5.
But if you all were there in our house, you'll see George had lines on the wall because he will always measure with his height, trying to see how tall he is, because he wanted to be taller all the time because he loved sports. So he always wanted to be the best. He used to make the best banana mayonnaise sandwiches, and he used to make syrup sandwiches because George couldn't cook, he couldn't boil water.
Floyd's brother testified a day earlier than expected. Also on the stand was a cardiologist who said Floyd's death was the result of low blood oxygen levels, not drugs or a pre-existing heart condition, as the defense has argued. The prosecution is expected to wrap up their case in the coming days.